Let me start again. Welcome everybody to the Personnel Board. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Stephen Conway.
Super, thank you very much. Do we have any substitutes? No, super. Minutes of the previous meeting. We've got the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of August 2023. Have we got any comments? Okay. I wanted to make a comment, and that is it's page 6. It's point number 28, Director of Children's Services Permanent Recruitment Proposal. We talk in line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, line 5 about the figure quoted being a gross figure. Can we correct that to say gross figure and also on costs? Yeah. To me, I think gross figure just means it's before tax. Super. Thank you very much. Are there any more comments about that? Okay. Then I propose that we accept the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of August 2023, seconded by Lindsay. All those in favour? Fantastic. Okay. Did you get those voting in favour? Abstentions? That's Prue.
Sorry, I should put the microphone on. I'm abstaining because I wasn't there.
Super. Okay. And anybody against? No, super. So that is carried. Thank you very much. Do we have any declarations of interest?
Just thinking about it, I am a trustee of Kaleidoscopic UK, who are a charity that set up to combat domestic abuse. But I don't think it will prejudice me. It's a personal interest.
Fantastic. So we've got no concerns about Prue debating and voting on that. Okay, super. 30, point number 35, public question time. Do we have any questions from the public?
No.
No. 36, member question time. Do we have any questions from members?
No.
No. Thank you very much. So that brings us to item 37, domestic abuse policy refresh. Are you going to introduce us on that?
Yep, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. So this is the an update on the domestic abuse policy. We have had one in place at the council for some years. However, this is now being reviewed, and there are a couple of reasons for that. Firstly, it's just taking on board the need to break down the policy so that it sets out support that can be for those that are unfortunately on the other end of domestic abuse, and also perpetrators and how the council will deal with those. And then the second part is then guidance for managers, and then how to deal with perhaps that particular situation with an employee. I think this is a really important policy to have in place. Unfortunately, as the statistics state there, I think 5% of our 5.5% of our employees, I'm afraid, could be experiencing domestic abuse, which can equate up to 74 people. These are just guidelines, but again, I'm afraid it's just sort of pointing out why the importance of just having this this policy in place to provide the right type of support for people and give guidance to our managers. As you can see, it is also in line with the fact that the council is looking to move towards its accreditation with the Domestic Abuse Housing Alliance. So the policy, whilst put together with HR, is also in line with community safety as well. So it's not been done in isolation. This has been done across both those services to ensure that we're all coming from the same point of view. I'm very happy to take questions that you may have, or as I say, the policies are before you.
Super. Pauline and then Pauline.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a comprehensive document, and there's lots about how to spot abuse amongst your colleagues and what managers can do to help and training them and so on. But two questions I can't find the page now, but in the page where you're talking about how to publicise this amongst the authority, I don't see any mention of posters. Yet when I go into a lot of buildings, there are posters all over the place about, are you suffering from domestic abuse? This is what you should do about it. So I wondered if we could add some posters in loos and offices and things as well. And the other question, as I say, there's a lot of advice to managers on what they can do, but what I don't see is any advice on how somebody suffering from domestic abuse can move out of the family home and where they can go, because it's all very well to say you should move out, but then the next question is, where do I go? Where do I get help? How do I know where to move to? Who will help me there? And I'd like to see a little bit more in that about what we can do in practice to help them move out of that domestic scene and into another, whether it's just to point them to the housing department or what, but there needs to be some clear guidance on what you can do to move out.
Okay. Did Sally or Louise want to respond to that?
I think.
Oh, Sally, yes.
Hi, evening everyone. The posters are factored into the materials that will be published and displayed. So we've built in a provision for the production and dissemination of the policy and the guidance, but we'll also ensure that the posters will be sort of shown across the building and all of our sites. That is covered off in the summary report on the front page, but we'll make sure that that's made a bit clearer.
And I can take the second point if that's okay. Just on page 17, it just points out where help can. I know there's a lot of information in these reports, so it's not always the most obvious, but it's Woking Domestic Abuse Support Service that's delivered by Cranston, and that's for employees of Woking and Borough Council, whether you live in the borough or you don't live in the borough, will be there to help. And there's information and telephone numbers, etc., of who to contact.
Is it also the case that I think I read somewhere in this document that the time at which somebody who is suffering from abuse looks to leave their partner is a time at which they are in great danger, and therefore there was a recommendation, I think it was how managers should support and deal with these situations. It does actually say it is vital that people do go and get a comprehensive support service to try and keep them safe during that time of risk to them.
Yes, absolutely does. Yep.
Super. I think it's Pauline Jorgensen and then Prue.
Thank you. I don't want to drag this out because we went through it as scrutiny as well, and I think it's a really good document, although maybe a little bit on the long side. I think the second bit of it, the support guidance, actually would be useful to split off a bit more obviously and send links to councillors, because actually that's useful guidance if you come across any residents that have the same problem and the same need. There's no reason why this should be just limited to employees. And the only question I had was, you mentioned accreditation. How much does that cost and what do we get for it?
There's a question. I'm not sure that I think we're going to have to take that away and we'll get you a written response.
I'm just
that one.
I'm nervous about accreditation. There's an awful lot of accreditations that just don't actually deliver much, but give you a long ongoing burden, continuing to prove that you are accredited, and doesn't actually do anything for the people that we're trying to help. So I'm just worried about that.
I will go back and make sure that I share that back with the committee so that you've got that information.
Super, thanks, Prue.
Just a couple of things to pick up, because you're absolutely right, Rachel, that the time at which you leave a partner is the time of most danger. And I'm very pleased to see in the policy that you say don't ever encourage a person to leave. They have to be ready to leave themselves. It's really important. And I know that some of our partner and voluntary organisations like the CAB have got people trained in this as well. And I agree with Pauline's point. Some of the pointers as to how to deal with it will be very useful for councillors, because there's a danger that might do the wrong thing out of good intentions. And the last thing before Sally comes in, abuse doesn't stop if you leave the relationship. So post-separation abuse is really a constant issue. And in fact, I think this is it still post-separation week? So there's a lot of publicity going on at the moment about that aspect. So, I think it's important that we get managers to understand that even if somebody has finished the relationship, the abuse could still be continuing, and they might still be at risk as well as coping with the trauma.
That's all duly noted, and I think actually some of the things that we just need to do there is just break down some of the information. A few more headings might help. Break down.
It's all in there.
It's just breaking it down a little bit so you can get to it and see it quicker. Sorry, Sally, you carry on.
So no, I just think the point about making sure that this is a document that's not just used for staff but for members is a really valid point. So what Louise and I can do is work directly with Andrew Moulton and his team about including it in the member development programme, especially for existing and for new members as well. So
I think rather than putting it in training embedded in that, I'd prefer to see something really short and sharp to come back to Prue's point about pulling out the really important points. And for me, the really important points are the things that Prue just mentioned, plus this couple of pages on who to go to. And I would like to see that just pulled out and sent to everybody, because that means that what happens with my experience, maybe it's just me, but my experience with training is everybody listens to the training, nods furiously, thinks it's great, and then promptly forgets some of it. And if you've got something that's staring you in the face, you can then look up when you need it. It helps.
Sally.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll do both as well, so we can make sure anybody's new who's joining, we don't kind of miss it. And I'm assuming there's some kind of member pack that we can include it in, as well as getting it out to existing members as soon as possible. So we'll pick that up directly with Andrew Moulton and his team. Thanks, Paul.
Yes, I think both would be really appreciated. And I was going to add an even wider question, and that is, I think that this is a very valuable document. I think, if I understand rightly, it'll be on the website, so it will be available publicly. So, any employer who, for example, wants to use some of this wording to develop their own policy could do that. Is there anything that we can do to boost understanding of it with, for example, partner organisations that we work with the voluntary and community sector, so that they're aware of this as a resource which they can pick up and use?
Absolutely, yes. We can take this policy through to our voluntary sector action group. What I'd be really keen as well to do is make sure we do this in partnership with the community and safety team, and potentially, because it's part of place and growth, we can pick that up as well through the business community and the engagements we've got through economic development. But we can certainly take the action to share that, and obviously as we coordinate the VSAG meeting, we can certainly pick up that part of the action.
That would be brilliant, because I think it would be great. There's a lot of work gone into this, and the more value that we can get out of it, the better. Prue.
Just so they don't get forgotten, if we could check without doing it in a condescending way, so it implies they haven't done it already, but multi-academy trusts and schools is another area that might find it useful.
I think that's a really good idea. Lindsay.
We've got Cranston as the company that provides this support. If we're making this available to other bodies, is that still applicable, or is that become not applicable? Because I wouldn't want to have confusion.
Sally.
So what Louise and I will do is pick it up with the community safety team as the experts within the organisation about creating potentially a more sanitised version that we can share wider. And I think that's right and proper that we do that through the community safety team, because they are the experts on that function.
It might apply to the point that Pauline raised about counsellors, because if a member of staff approaches a counsellor, this is applicable. But if this is a member of the public, it's not. So I think we need to be careful about how this is used.
Super. I think we've got Sally Halliwell and then Prue.
To respond.
You're first, are you? Yes.
Yes. I think for local residents, Cranston does still apply. It still applies because that's our commissioned service locally, so they absolutely are the right place to signpost people to. But what we'll do is just make sure that anything that we share with partners has the support of the community safety team, so we can make sure that in our efforts to do the right thing, we do it properly. So that's my suggestion.
Super, thanks. And Sally Halliwell, were you wanting to comment on that as well?
Yeah, I think it was just picking up what Pauline had said about councillors having access to ready information. So we've talked about posters being displayed around buildings for employees, and I was just wondering if it's worthwhile us looking at whether or not we could produce some copies of information that councillors could then have, so it would have support numbers on it. So if they are out and about in the community or they're speaking to residents, that they've got something to hand to be able to say, rather than you know what Pauline's saying is you get your training and then you don't always have it. But if we could produce something, then we, you know, I can happily pull something together for councillors.
I think that would be very useful, and for the numbers to be somewhere that can be found really easily on the website as well.
Yeah.
So you can point people towards them. Pauline Jorgensen.
Yeah, that would be great. One of the most useful bits of paper I got from the council at one point or another was a sheet of all the financial places that people could go for help, and it's just one page of A4.
Yeah.
And I think that equivalent would be really useful.
Yeah. We can speak to a digital team.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just want to say one thing about this, and I absolutely agree and support that. You have to be really careful with that piece of paper. If you leave it with somebody who's in a relationship and they find out that they've been contacting somebody about it, it could be really, really dangerous. So they shouldn't ever take it with them and accidentally leave it behind, or try to give it to somebody, or any of those sorts of things.
Sally.
At risk of repeating myself, I think for us, what Louise, Sally and I need to do is absolutely make sure the community safety team are the people who lead on what we provide to members, because they will be best placed to ensure it's the right information at the right time, just to support our ambition to be doing the right thing in the right way.
Super. Lindsay.
Two things. I think there needs to be a document put together to deal with the type of things we've just discussed, so that we've got it clarified. So I think that needs to follow on. And secondly, what about out of hours connect problems? Because we've got a telephone number here. When is it? When is it operational? Is it a 7 days a week, 24-hour number? Is it 9 to 5, Monday to Friday? You know, it's things like that that I think we need to understand.
Sally.
I think that's a fair point, and it would be good for us to include that in here, because I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. So we'll take that away, Lindsay, and look at how we can include that, both for officers and for anything we provide to members or partners.
Super. I did have one thought, and that was just about the scope. And I think the scope that's been used here is probably one which is quite generic to other HR policies. And I was just wondering if we could revisit that. So rather than saying, you know, it doesn't apply to agency staff, you need to contact your agency provider, that we soften this, but we look to soften that a bit. I mean, I understand absolutely that we have to be very careful as an organisation that we're never seen to be acting as the employer for those people. But I would hope that this policy does include information that would be useful for everybody, whether or not they are connected with this organisation.
Yep, I
Super.
confirm we'll pick that up. Yeah,
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Louise. So if there's no more comments or questions about this, thank you very much for that really comprehensive piece of work. I think that is a brilliant piece of work, and thank you for the comments around the table tonight about how we can pick that up and use that to boost understanding within the council and the wider community. I would like to propose that with the amendments that we propose that we that we move forward with this, and that we adopt this policy. Can I have a seconder for that? Pauline, thank you very much. All those in favour? Super. Abstentions? Were you in favour? Sorry, Pauline. Okay, that's fine. So I think we are unanimous on that. Thank you very much. Okay, so the next point is item 38, the workforce equalities monitoring report. Is that you again, Louise, going to take
It is. I will start, but
Yeah.
as I say, I have Sally Watkins and Sally Halliwell with me. So if I miss something out, they will absolutely pick it up. So workforce equalities monitoring data. This is something that we bring on an annual basis to review the makeup of our workforce and how we're doing with regard to how that compares with our borough as well. So the figures in here have comparators within it. We are looking to publish this information. So this is something that it would be published on our website. As you can see, we've taken a different sort of approach with this particular report. And we've tried to make it a little bit clearer and set it out quite clearly with the tables and the different breakdowns and different types of characteristics that we are obviously measuring. Now, one thing just to add, and it is noted at the start of our the report. This information is requested as part of the recruitment process. It's not mandatory for somebody to fill this information out. So we are starting to see an improvement with regard to the numbers of staff that are now sharing that information. And within the HR team and working with our staff network groups, we're trying to also promote how we improve this data at all times, so that we've got a really good, clear understanding of the makeup of within our authority. Now, as you can see, there are a number of tables, and I'm very happy if anyone has any specific questions that they would like to raise around any of the tables. But it's a bit strange to take you right straight to the back of a report, but what we have done at the back of the report is then set out an action plan of different areas where we feel we can make improvements. And as I say, I have spoken to the chair, and one thing we have probably not shared on here are some dates for when we're actually going to complete this. So we will be adding some dates to this, and we will add back in a review in 6 months' time with regard to how we are performing against those particular actions. So again, I just wanted to make a note of that right from the outset, because it's a fair point, and we should. That is a miss. We've got a target there. We've said who owns it. We've said what the action is, but we haven't said when we're going to do it by. So that could take us forever. So we're not, obviously that is not going to be the case. We will be giving each different parts of our team these different actions to undertake. The other thing that we are also doing with our staff network groups is also sharing this data and asking for other initiatives that they feel that we could maybe put in place to again further make improvements around this data. I'm happy to take questions. I know how thorough you as councillors are, so I'm sure you've got questions on these, and obviously very happy to take questions on the information before you.
Fantastic. I think I saw Prue first and then Stuart.
I've just got a couple of things. I think it's very hard with the disability data because we've got so little information about so many people. So how are you planning to address that huge gap? We've made a lot of progress with the other areas, but we've got about half our stuff we don't know anything about. So that was the first one. The second one is about the spread with gender and ethnicity in the salary ranges.
Yep.
It seems to me the preponderance of women in the council, obviously women in pretty senior positions. I think Lindsay and Stuart a bit outnumbered as well, but it is very much a female environment now, and yet it feels to me that it's a bit like primary schools where the men seem to be in the higher categories. So I think what I don't see in here and what we don't get in the other report really is analysis of the gender pay gap and what we're going to do about it. And I'm channeling Rachel Burgess, who is she raises it significantly, is if we can do something, a bit more analysis on that. I think I'm not asking you to close it. I think just to feature it as something. There's not only gender pay, the ethnicity pay gap as well, if there is one, because it's a bit hard to work out whether there is. And the only other thing I think I wanted to say was we seem to have made quite a lot of progress on getting data, and that's a good thing, because you don't know what you can do if you don't actually have any data to base any decision making on.
Yep.
Super. Yes.
So thank you. Yes. So with regard to the disability, yes, that was absolutely picked up, and in one of the actions, and I know it's one small thing that we're looking at, but we're looking at the disability confidence scheme around recruitment, and again sharing the learning around that and becoming a disability confident employer. So I want us to work towards that, and again this all will come back to what training we also give to our management team. So that is one action we are absolutely taking around that. Also, we have the neurodiverse staff network group that, again, we're working with regard to, again, how do we help and put initiatives in, and again, training our managers and staff more generally with regard to, again, recruitment processes. So, again, that they are not put at a disadvantage, and also what they can add, because again they can bring some absolutely massive strengths into our organisation. So we're looking at that around disability, but again this is where I want the staff networks to share their ideas as well of other things that we can be doing with regard to the work we need to do. Yeah, I understand. I hear you loud and clear with regard to bringing together the gender pay gap information and sort of making sure that, as you say, we understand that a bit more, and what is it that we're going to do about it. I think some of that is just, it's the way that it is, but it's understanding that and you being able to see that. So I absolutely understand the point around that. We are doing some work around the ethnicity piece and pay, just from an accuracy point of view, again, with regard to, so we're looking at a bit of a tabletop exercise in HR around that, because again, why is that not open, and why are people not taking or having those opportunities? Or is it where it's data where people haven't disclosed, that they are in one of those groups? So I hope I've answered the questions that you have asked, and absolutely, I think working with our different teams, we will try and, as I say, action some of this and come back with what it is that we're looking to do in the next 6 months. Well, we will do what we're going to say, what we're going to do, and what have we achieved in the next 6 months, I think. So yes, I will be silent now.
Sally Halliwell, were you hoping to comment on that?
It was just as Louise briefly mentioned there about the data. I think we do have quite a lot of gaps. We've got a lot of old data that hasn't been transferred onto the new system, so we're not accurately holding, full information. So we want to try and make it as easy as possible for employees to submit their data. So rather than having to input it themselves onto the system, we're looking at ways that they can share that information through forms, so we'll then input it ourselves. And as Louisa sort of said, hopefully with the gaps it would show a change then in the pay as well. So it was just the work that we're trying to do to encourage more people to share.
That's great, thank you very much. What sort of timescales are you expecting? Should we expect to see a difference in the data with the work that you're doing on that?
I would hope over the remainder of this financial year. So we commit and we meet with the staff networks on a monthly basis, and as we're increasing relationships with them, they will work with us to make sure that people are disclosing their information and working with us to encourage people to disclose their personal information as well in relation to the gaps that we've got. So it's a continuing piece of work that we're just strengthening on month by month more than anything.
Thank you very much, Sally. I think Stuart, you were next.
Yeah, I mean, quite a lot of what I was going to ask, I think has been answered. I think we need to say what it is that we've achieved in this report as a headline at the front, rather than as an annual update, right? And what's the big difference? Because I think we should, if we've done lots of good stuff, we should say so. And also, I think a summary of what it might look like next year. Yeah, because obviously the more data we've got, the more information we've got, the easier it is to understand all of this stuff, just as Prue said. And finally, what's an SLF? Senior Leadership Forum?
Good point.
So I think you're right, Stuart. I think I can say this. Sally and Louise have done a huge amount of work around being able to work much more closely with our staff network. So I think you're right. We should absolutely say what we've achieved today, but for me it will absolutely balance with there's still more for us to do, and I think that is reflected in the report. An SLF is a service level forum, so directors chair them on a regular basis with groups of staff, and it's grade blind, so yeah, and it supports our CWC, so we don't like acronyms in HR. I know, so did I.
We love a bit of acronym, don't we?
Super. I think that's a really good idea, Stuart. I think that would be really helpful.
Thank
I think I've got Lindsay, and then it's you, Pauline, if that's okay.
Yes, I think this is about the 6th of these I've seen, but we've been on personnel board for a few years. There is definitely additional information and improvement. I just want to pick something up Prue said, because I actually disagree. Gender breakdown, table 5, page 50. Overall percentage, female 74, male 26.
Yep.
But if you look at the salary profile, it goes 6% for male, and it's spread fairly evenly. So I actually disagree that there is like a secondary school. I think that the issue that I've always had with these, I think, is it varies from role to role. If you go into highways, if you go into communication and everything, you get a different format. And because there's a lot of people in children's services and adult social services, and their preponderance is to be female, it makes that imbalance. So what I've always had difficulty working out is, are we actually being equality within the roles as best we can? And I've never been able to get at it, and it doesn't feel. But what I would say is that table 5 is the first time I've seen that broken down male female as salary. I don't think it is that there's a lot of male. There may be residual male people in senior roles that have been there for a while. But I think that when you've got 3-to-1 female male, you're going to have a preponderance. And I have to put my hand up for the male side of things to say, don't forget the male. It's equality, not just whatever. I've always been in favour of bringing the balance back because it was tilted, but we need to be careful we don't tilt it the other way. So I feel that this is the table 5 is a very, very helpful information, because what it shows is that there are, as a percentage of male people, approximately 1/4 in under 30,000, approximately 1/4 in 30 to 40, approximately 1/4 in the 40 to 50, and approximately 1/4 in the 50,000 plus of the male people. That does not suggest a male dominance. That may be what we need, and it's not too dissimilar when you look at the female. That it's a bit less at the very high level, and there is still an imbalance at the bottom. So there is still that, but that could be the roles people play. And I think that's the issue I've always had with previous documents that have come out. We look at them, and what I still don't quite know is, are we really doing inequalities? And I think we're getting there. And I just want to make sure that we don't overbalance.
Before we move off that.
Yes,
point,
I've got two. Yeah, I've got
Yes.
two things I want to say, but Prue's
Yes.
dying to say
Yes.
something.
And if it's not said,
Am I going to get moaned at?
Yeah, no, you're not.
You're probably right with
Yeah.
us. Birmingham City Council, they did
Yeah.
not sort this out.
No.
We sorted it out many years ago. We did it, is it the Green Book?
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when we still had the council, the employee council thing that we used to have many years ago, we sorted out our equivalent roles of male and female roles predominantly, and which was work of equal value and all those things that Birmingham signally failed to do. And that's why we and most other councils are in a good position on this, because we evaluated all our roles properly many years ago. And so we know which ones are what value. So I think we're pretty in a good place on that.
that was one thing I wanted to make sure was confirmed. So I appreciate that, Councillor Bray. I think it's really important just to confirm that if you're doing the same or a similar type of work, you will be paid a similar level for that work. And this is where we need to have an equitable job evaluation system in place. Now, we are always reviewing those policies, because I always think there is room for, we always look for improvement. So we will, one of our, the things that we're doing currently is reviewing that, being new into Wokingham, but we are not in the position, as you've just said, Councillor Bray, with regards to where Birmingham are in a very difficult situation at this point in time around equal pay.
Yes, absolutely. Proving the value of HR. Pauline.
I was about to say precisely that, well, exactly the same as Lindsay did about job families. I've had the same problem doing this. You've got to split your pilots from your cabin crew, and then make sure that people in the same sort of job are paid equally, evenly, in proportion to their performance, and gender and sex and everything blind. So yeah, splitting it by job is definitely the right answer. I don't think they're quite even, Lindsay. I mean, I think there should be still some more women in the 50,000 plus. Yeah, but yeah, it's not bad, and this is a really clear report. So thank you.
It's a great report. I was actually going to say, with that table 5 gender breakdown by salary grouping, are all the salaries quoted at a full-time equivalent? So or could the figures be muddled because a larger number of women are working full-time potentially?
No, we would use the full-time equivalent.
Full-time equivalent
salary.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It might be useful in future reports to note that. And the other thing that I was going to suggest, I think there are a couple of other tables where it's the same, is what we've done is we have, for example, the percentage of the council employees who are men or who are women at the different salary bands. It would be quite useful if we could have percentages of women or percentages of men who are in salary bands as well, and that would help us get a clear picture without having to get the calculator out at a glance of what percentage of women, for example, are in a particular salary band. I had a couple more things that I wanted to mention. Prue.
Yes, this is a very small point, and it may not apply in the council, but we only have 2 columns, male and female. What happened to other people who are not in those categories?
That's a fair comment,
especially in a report about equality.
And actually, no one else brought that up. So I take that on board, and that is duly noted, and we will make sure that is rectified going forward.
Yes, thank you. That is a really good point. I just had a couple of questions, comments. First of all, on table 2, the ethnicity breakdown. At the moment, we have it broken down into white British and ethnic minority groups. At what point would we start to break down ethnic minorities into subgroups? Is it something that you've made a deliberate decision at the moment? It doesn't add particular value, but if it goes above a certain percentage, then it would start to become useful. I was just quite hoping to get your input
absolutely.
on that.
We do actually break this down a lot further from a recruitment perspective from when we're asking ethnicity. With regard to just from a reporting perspective, it was just to look at it in a more simple term, and it's not meant in any way it's not important, and this is probably thing that we need to bring up with our ethnically diverse staff network as well, and just talk that through with them. I'm very happy to add, as I say, different items and break that down further if required, because I don't want people to feel they're grouped into one category as such, because that's not what this is about. This is not what this is about. So
so more discussion might be that change in the future. And then I was going to say, I think there's at least 2 tables where age could be a significant factor, and that is table 3, which is the ethnicity breaking by salary grouping. And then when we're looking at disability, because unfortunately the older we get, the more likely we are to be disabled. And I was just wondering, is it practical? And that may well be something that you would have to go away and look at, to see if we could adjust or comment in some way as to the effects that age would have. So, for example, with where we're comparing the number of staff with a disability, we compare it to the number of people in the borough who have a disability. But if it's possible to get a figure showing people in the borough with a disability who are of working age, that might be a more useful comparator for us.
I'll definitely look into that, Chair. No problem at all.
Thank you. Pauline?
Just suddenly something struck me whilst you were talking about that. Are these categories set by any statute or something? Because 50,000 plus is one hell of a big range. And I think you might find more of your more opportunity for inequality when you look at, if you went to say up to 200,000 in steps rather than 50,000. 50,000 to the top paid person in the council is a big gap compared to all the other steps, which are quite small. So why is it stop at 50,000?
It probably is a standard report that we've picked up on. It's something we can have a look at. But it's a fair point raised. Don't know, Sally, did you want to come in?
Because we have to publish it, I wonder if it is standard grouping.
That's what I think.
I think it's because it is a required publication that every council has to.
We have to be comparable, I think, don't we?
I
with
think
another
they do,
authority.
because they look at it as a whole, and I suspect they'd benchmark.
We might want to suggest
we can certainly double check.
We might want to suggest to people who write the standards, they update their standards from the 1970s and potentially, well, maybe not 1970s, 1990s. And it would be useful to see the full range rather than just the bottom half of it.
Yes, I agree. I think that's a really good idea.
We can certainly check. It's the public sector equality at duty, so we have to do it. But I can certainly run some checks on it.
Lindsay.
Directors and assistant directors are well above 50, 75,000 up. So I think it would be quite useful to have a separate one which says directors, male, female, assistant directors, male, female, and ethnicity, because that is the group that we, as councillors, we deal with.
Although there is one caveat, you can't get it so granular that you can identify who it is.
I was just going to say, we need to be careful.
You could combine the two.
Yeah, although we do have people whose salaries are published. So
I was just going to say that. That's what I was going to say. There is a public report that has those people in it.
Yes.
Now, table number 7 was the most unusual one for me because statistically speaking, we've got nobody self-reporting themselves as being gay on the council, which is very unusual. I mean, I note that you've got 5% who prefer not to say. Now, you did explain to me that some of that was like
44%. 44% not declared.
44% not declared.
Yeah.
But it did beg the question for me: what are we doing to encourage people to report sexual orientation, first of all? And secondly, should we be asking questions about why people are reluctant to support to report their sexual orientation? Is that kind of figure quite common within organisations, or is it something that people within Woking Borough Council are unusually reticent, and we should really be challenging ourselves on why our employees don't maybe feel able to report that?
I think personally, I think it's unusual because it's coming from other local authority. I know that normally we're reporting on numbers there, but what I think is unusual here is that I'm used to where I am that data would automatically go into the system as long as the person obviously has declared it and wanted to share it. Whereas I just think it's, again, the way we gathered this data is a lot of what we need to do and improve. I will bring you in, Sally, because I know you've got work that you're doing on this, but yeah, I think, again, we just need to be encouraging, and we do want to make sure that we want to celebrate this and understand it. So yeah, I think it's something we need to look in. If you don't mind, Chair,
yes,
Sally, if you just want to add.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it is about data gaps again. We've talked about sort of ethnic groups not declaring, and I think it's exactly the same situation where we've got a lot of long-standing employees that potentially have been here for a very long time and never been asked to update it. So is that process of data gathering, inputting, and making sure that we're growing our data set that we have. There is a new system. Well, it's not new. We've had a system in for a couple of years now, and I just don't think there's ever been that migration of old data onto it. So we can sweep all the protected characteristics up in a sort of bulletin and work through the staff networks and the SLFs as well to encourage people to data share.
That would be brilliant, because I think anything that we can do to reassure people, I think that this is information that it is safe to disclose, and if people do feel that it's something that they can't disclose, that we understand why, and does that reflect something more broadly about the way that they feel about can they be open within the council. Pauline Jorgensen.
So the experience I've got in the company I worked for was that we asked people every year, and some of these things can change over time.
Yeah, and I would, if you don't mind, sorry, Chair, I'm coming straight in, but I absolutely agree, and I think Sally's raised a really good point. It's something, again, I was used to looking at annually, so that, again, we were always looking at that data set. So I think there's lots of improvements as a team that we can make to this data, and that we'll be able to, in our summary, when we come back next time, be able to demonstrate the difference, hopefully, we've made from this year to next year.
I think that's a brilliant idea.
That's the statement.
Thank you very much, Lindsay.
Two comments about table 7. Is gay the appropriate setting? Is it a bit old-fashioned, I thought, or I don't. I'll leave it to people to say. But don't also forget that there are certain communities where it is difficult, if that's the right word, for somebody in that community to indicate their sexual preference, because they could have problems. Mm-hmm. So I think there's an issue that we need to be cognizant on in certain parts, and it goes across quite a few religions.
Yeah, and you would hope that at work people feel safe to disclose that information, even if they might not within another setting potentially. I think you do also raise a really good point there, Lindsay, that I think it would be good to go back and to refresh, maybe talking to some of our employees, the categorisation that we're using, and saying, is that still the right, breakdown? Are they still the right terms? Would people like to see those updated?
Yeah, I think, again, just with regard to the equalities duty and the requirements of the report, I think as an action, though, what we will take away from the meeting today is to check these terms, so that before we publish any of this document, that we've checked that those terms are correct and are in line with what the Act is asking us to publish. So I will absolutely take that on board.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. The biggest question that I had, to be honest, was about table 10. And we kind of got two tables on page 54, where we're looking at the number of applicants broken down into white, British, ethnic minority, and prefer not to say, the number of people who are shortlisted, and then the number of people who are appointed. And the number of applicants is remarkably similar between white British and ethnic minority groups. It's 48%. But then there is a very sharp drop between that figure and the number of people who are shortlisted and the number of people who are then ultimately appointed. And I was wanting to ask a few questions. First of all, would it be possible for us to just look into whether there are any factors that we should be taking into account in applicants? So I have worked in a place before, for example, where we had a lot of people apply from outside of the UK, who therefore would not be white British by definition, who really didn't have any hope of ever getting right to live and work within the UK. So in that kind of situation, it would skew the figures. Is that something that it would be possible to do, first of all, just to see if there's any false distortion of the figures?
I think it's a really good point that I have to say I hadn't thought of. So I think it's something we should check, because we had picked up on this. And one of our actions in the action plan was actually to look at bringing in anonymising application forms and just trialling that as well, just as an addition. But I will also take on the point that you raise as well, because as I say, we could then add in, we still obviously report the data, but obviously if we're able to, if there is anything like that is coming out, that we're actually sharing that information. So yeah, I will absolutely look at that. Because Sally, I don't think that's something we've perhaps looked at or checked.
No, and actually thinking about recent recruitment campaigns, that we are seeing an increase in people that are abroad applying for jobs over here. So I do think it's a really valid point that we need to factor in.
That's great. Thank you very much. And I think leading on to that, I think it would also be good to see if we can identify any reasons why you have such a difference between the number of people who are shortlisted and the number of people who are appointed by ethnic backgrounds, to understand that. And then once we've got a wider understanding, to talk to the senior leadership team and to feed some of this back to recruiting managers, because just raising awareness can actually be very powerful.
Absolutely, and we'll be looking to share this report anyway throughout our sort of management teams, through our business partner. So yes, I'll take that on board too.
Fantastic, thank you. Pauline Jorgensen.
Just to come back on your point, it's a really good point, especially with online applicants. I think if the first question should be, have you got the right to live and work in the UK? If the answer is no, you should be removing them from the figures, because it distorts it. We used to get lots and lots and lots and lots of applications from people who've got no chance of working in the UK because they would never get a work permit. You shouldn't be counting them because it really distorts your picture. The second thing was about disability confidence. I've run a recruitment department where we were registered as disability confident. Yeah. So if I can help, I've done it
very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be great.
Fantastic. Okay, Prue.
Two things. One is that there are some categories where we are trying to recruit people from abroad, or we have in the past, which is also a part. So social workers from Canada and things like that, and Australia and so on. So we may need to consider that carefully. And what the heck was the second point?
Yes, just to come in on that, yes. There are exemptions for certain categories of employment, so they have got the right to live and work in the UK.
Yeah, it's just taking into account that subtlety.
Yeah.
The other thing was about whether managers who are doing recruiting have unconscious bias training.
That is something, yes, that is in our, yes. It's actually started, I think, in the e-learning, and then we're looking at taking that to the next step as well. So yes, I can confirm that is happening.
Fantastic. And I just had one final question when it was looking at the action plan, and we're looking to review job boards and advertising mediums used to attract candidates to ensure that they reach all minority groups. And I was just curious as to whether we feel that makes a difference these days, or do most people just pile onto the main ones? Does it make a difference? And if so, where does it make a difference?
We're just gathering new data, because the job boards and some of our methods are quite new. So I will be bringing back some information around recruitment and what we're doing. But we are absolutely, I can. There are examples where a role has gone out on our traditional website, and yes, we are using LinkedIn ourselves, but when we have then put them onto the multiple job boards that are out there, that they're the big players where people, if they're looking for a job, we might not have maybe gone in the past to actually recruit. So we are seeing a difference, and I think we'll be able to demonstrate that back and show you. And also, I think it's community care job board. I think again we're seeing some fantastic increase in the number of applications that we're also getting, and a better reach by using that job board. So again, I have to say, and I will make a shout out to our recruitment specialist Lee, who's making a real difference into the directorates around that area. So sorry, they've gone off the point a little bit.
That's
We
very
are making a big
yes, yeah,
it's starting to make a difference.
fantastic, Lindsay. Yeah.
Just like to raise a concern because the information about disabled people is a bit vague. And unfortunately, the council doesn't have previous history of being particularly good at dealing with disabled people. I know it predates people here, but we did have some issues. I would like to have an understanding that we are have addressed that issue fully, because there was a legacy issue. Won't go into it because this is in public, not private. And I just want to make sure, because the information that I looked at, which is on table 8, which is disability, I don't understand that information. And of course, it's caveated with it concerned with moving from 1% to 16%. And not say. So I would like to have some indication that we have dealt with that particular, in this instance I was physical disability, but we now have other disabilities coming through in greater, and I would like to, I think there might be a bit of a gap.
Is that something that it would be useful for us to maybe pick up outside of this meeting? Because it sounds as if there is some background there that you wouldn't feel comfortable necessarily sharing in an open forum that we could learn from.
Yeah.
Right,
We are absolutely happy to learn. I do think there are initiatives that we can put in place with regard to, as I say, it's the disability confident approach, our neurodiverse training awareness as well. We are looking at, I think it's just breaking down barriers, I think, and just ensuring that, as I say, we're getting the right skills and knowledge to do the job. So, but I'm very happy to take offline, obviously, any feedback that you would like to share to ensure that we're not falling into or doing anything that has maybe happened previously, and that we're continuing to learn from where things have maybe not happened as you feel they should have done in the past.
Fantastic, thank you. Sally.
Yeah, I think it's just worth sharing that, again, you know, on top of the ethnically diverse staff network, we do have a neurodiverse staff network, and the work that we are doing with people from all walks across the workforce is really improving. And being new to Wokingham myself, Wokingham actually is really positive when it comes to these groups. I've been at 2 previous councils where they would never have contemplated doing anything that Wokingham does. And I think we are breaking down those barriers slowly, but there is a lot more work that we can do. We're looking at whether or not we can increase the amount of staff networks. We obviously have our service level forums, and we do work really closely with these groups to make sure that we're pushing that it's okay to come and talk to us, that we want to work with people and be proactive with our workforce. So I think there is a shift already happening, but as Louise has said, we'd be more than happy to have conversations offline.
Fantastic, thank you very much. I had one final comment myself, and that is a lot of these things tend to change fairly slowly. It would be absolutely brilliant to maybe build on Stuart's very good suggestion that we have a bit of history and a forward look. If we could start looking at how things have changed over possibly a 5-year, possibly a 10-year period, and that will give us a good idea of the direction of travel. So if it's possible to look at that, I think that would be very, very useful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Super. Were there any final comments? on this item. Okay, thank you again very much for all the work that you have done on that. That's a fantastic piece of work and very useful, and I think it sparked an interesting discussion tonight. So can I propose that the Personnel Board approves the Workforce Qualities Monitoring Report so that this can be published as required? Seconded by Prue. All those in favour? Pauline, were you wanting to vote on this? Pauline Hallier-Simons? We're just voting on the, yes. Super, thank you. So that's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. So I think we are coming to the end of the public part of the meeting, and we need to move into part 2. Louise is going to be. So can I move to